Hello, everyone. So this is Rob Kipa. He started fixing and selling electronics in high school as a way to earn some extra pocket money. During his college years studying electrical engineering, he moved into cell phone repair because his classmates and coworkers kept dropping their phones and cracking their screens. He has experience with many brands and types of repairs, from murky speakers to micro soldering. He hopes to show you how easy most repairs are when you have the right parts, good tools, and a little patience. Thank you, Rob.
Perfect. Thanks for that intro, Leah, and thanks for this great initiative. Yeah, let's get right into it. Yeah, you know a little bit about me. I've got some degrees. I've been fixing a bunch of phones. I just love taking stuff apart and putting it back together. And I've actually got a phone here today, which I hope to repair live in front of you. I've never actually taken it apart or even fixed it. It's just kind of this random phone that we had laying around. So I got some parts, and once we get through all this intro, we'll hopefully show you what it is like to repair your kind of average phone so that you can get confidence. That's my objective here, is to give you the confidence to take on something like this yourself. Eventually, one day, you might encounter a broken phone, and it might be a little bit expensive to get it fixed. So I hope to show you how easy it is to actually get that fixed when you have the right parts, good tools, and a little patience. You know, the Apple Genius bar kind of wants to close off the system, make sure that they're the only ones who are capable of this. But the truth is, most of you are already geniuses. All of you are already geniuses. So I just want to show that you got this, and you can save your phone, save your memories, save your money, and save the planet. So a little quick intro. I don't know if anyone's curious what's actually inside, but here's kind of a quick preview of what goes into your average smartphone. You know, it's not just this black box that magically makes things happen on the screen. There's a lot of thought and effort and planning that goes into it, but it all gets kind of broken down into standard pieces, whether it's an Apple or a Samsung or an Android of any other kind. You're always going to have a screen, a battery, and then a little board, which you can see right here, which is kind of the brains of the smartphone, which is more like a computer, really. It's kind of like a tiny little computer, which is running all sorts of little things. It's got all kinds of sensors and buttons and antennas off to the side here that make your cell phone signal work. And you got some speakers so you can talk and hear people, microphones as well, cameras so you can take your selfies and your photos, and a charging port so you can get electricity into the phone and charge that battery up. So more or less everything will be placed in different places depending on the phone, but you'll have the same kind of components. So you're always going to have a battery, for example, always going to have, you know, cameras and connectors and stuff like that. So once you know what to look for, it becomes pretty obvious what you're going to need to repair if something breaks. So the basic smartphone procedure, you know, you're going to panic first off that something isn't working. But then you're going to want to find the cause of the problem. So this is what I kind of mentioned. Once you know what the parts are that are what's responsible for what, you're going to be able to find the cause of the problem. Just maybe using Google and YouTube. Chances are someone somewhere on the face of the earth has had the exact same problem that you're having, basically. Thanks to the internet, there's like a giant community that you can instantly research and find out common problems and solutions. Sometimes it's going to be obvious, you know, if you dropped your phone and cracked your screen, it's a pretty obvious problem. But if, for example, like your camera is working in some apps, but not other apps, if your battery dies in a day, but then sometimes it works, it's going to be, you know, a little harder to figure out. And that's where you want to do your research. So spend a little time on that. You'll be surprised what you can figure out for free. Once you figure out your problem, you're going to want to buy some parts and tools, either locally or online. There's a slide later on where I can refer a few good shops, both locally and abroad. And once you get everything in front of you, you're going to get a little package like this. It's going to have some parts inside if you chose to order online, or you just walked into the store, you bought your parts and your tools. You're going to want to take some time to disassemble, replace, and reassemble. So I would budget quite a bit of time for this step, up to 2 hours. You know, shops that have experience with this, you can get in and out in like 15, 20, 30 minutes. But if you're doing this for the first time, you're going to want to take things really slow, really document your steps, go step by step, very slowly. You're going to want to maybe use a template like this, which shows you exactly where each screw goes step by step, so that you don't lose anything. You want to have a clean, organized workspace, kind of like this, and maybe even take a video so that you know what you did, and then you can just reverse those steps to put the phone back together. And obviously you want to test everything out, make sure everything works, that the actual part that you got isn't faulty or dead. Sometimes that happens, you know, parts come from China, they get shipped, bustled around, and can sometimes get damaged. It's a good idea to test it out, maybe even during the repair, so that you're not stuck with another problem on your hands. And once all is said and done, you're going to have a nice working phone, and going to be very relieved to have you know, your precious device back in functional order. So, you know, your basic troubleshooting, like I said, it's obvious if you've got a big cracked screen, that's kind of your problem. But sort of general troubleshooting steps, you know, try turning it off and on again. We can try going into some specifics here, but everything is about context. So, I mean, the situation really influences what the problem is going to turn out being. So if you have no power, or your phone just won't turn on, you know, there's a lot of different things that can cause that. Did you just leave it sitting in a cupboard for like a really, really long time while you went on vacation, and maybe you forgot to charge it? That could influence whether the battery decided to quit, because batteries don't like to just sit without any charging for a long time, especially if they have, you know, 5% or lower charge. It'll just go below the level where it can even turn the phone on. So you plug in a charger, it doesn't do anything. It's because the battery is just so dead, it won't respond. So usually you can just get away with replacing just the battery. It could be something even simpler. Maybe the power button is broken. That's happened a lot on older phones, especially iPhones. I've got one over here. If I can pull it out, you probably won't be able to tell on the video, but on this iPhone, which I'm holding, I don't know if you want to pop into gallery view so you can see the slides and my video side by side. But sometimes the power button literally just gets jammed, so you won't feel any more of a click when you're pressing it. So if that's the issue, then you can replace just the power button on most phones. So do your research, kind of figure out whether that's a replaceable part or not, but a very common issue. If it won't turn on and the button doesn't click, then you can just replace the power button. If you dropped it, and maybe you dropped it from like a really high height, and it's not turning on, there could be some internal damage on the board. If it, you know, flew out of a car or something like that, it might actually not be repairable at all, because you get to a point where, well, some things break that just can't be fixed, unfortunately, or it's maybe too expensive to fix. So depending on the context, it might be dead for good. If you dropped it in water, that's another thing. You might want to keep some those little silica packets. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but they come like when you buy shoes, when you buy clothes, or kind of things that need to stay dry and take away humidity. You can collect a little bundle of those and put your phone in a little Ziploc or Tupperware with a bunch of those in it. Works a lot better than rice, because this is like engineered to suck out moisture and humidity. So keep that on hand. Maybe it'll bring some life back to your device. Maybe it won't. Do your research. Again, there's some things you can do, like take apart your phone and kind of scrub out the insides with some rubbing alcohol. But yeah, it all depends. I've listed a whole bunch of things here. You know, you can have no display, you can have poor battery life, you can't hear others, or you can't charge your phone. So everything is context. Battery life is a big one. Camera is another one. Just the other time we were presenting, there was a volunteer who mentioned that, you know, their camera works in some apps or in the stock, the normal camera app, but not in others. So when you go on to like Instagram, you can't take selfies and stuff like that. Everything depends. When it comes to an issue like that, sometimes the phone's software might need to be reset. It might be an app that's just constantly using the camera, constantly using the battery. Stuff like Facebook is notorious for that. Really depends. In terms of battery, when your phone's kind of over the 2-year mark, 2 or 3 years old, that's when you're going to start to notice some deterioration, and it might be a good idea to replace it. Some newer phones, like the newer iPhones and the Androids, have a battery health indicator. So if you drop to maybe like 75%, and that's, your phone is literally only going to last 75% as long. So maybe it won't last to the end of the day. Maybe it'll be empty at maybe like 5 o'clock, before you've even got the chance to finish up your day and go home. So that's when you want to replace that battery. And a lot of things are just kind of simple, could be just dust or sand got where it shouldn't be. That's especially the case for the charging ports. And at the bottom, especially on these older iPhones where it's really big, dust just loves to get trapped down in here. So you can get in with a toothpick or something non-metallic, so you don't go damaging some of the delicate components there, but maybe like a plastic pick or just something thin to get out a lot of that dust and debris, and it might be able to fix your issue. I know I've fixed 2 or 3 phones just by going in and blowing out with a little compressed air duster or with a toothpick. You won't believe some of the stuff. It's kind of like a little belly button. It gets full of lint and just won't charge over time. So research, this is obviously the key to the issue, because I could just keep talking on and on and on, but there's no way that I can ever cover every single issue that goes on. So this is why you're going to want to use some key websites. Number one is kind of like the mobile repair Bible, is iFixit. So if you click on this link, which we're going to send out these slides afterwards, the iFixit website has repair guides for pretty much, I would say 80% of smartphones in existence these days. So literally step by step, which screw to take out and steps to take in specific order. I'm not going to be following one today because they don't have one for this particular phone, but everything, iPhone, Android, Samsung, HTC, LG, every single brand, if it's popular enough, it'll be listed on there. And if that fails, just Google or YouTube. YouTube is absolutely a wealth of knowledge. For some reason, people just love to share, it's kind of part of our nature. So when you figure out how to do something, you want to share it with others, you put it on YouTube and you help out however many hundred of people that come up with the same issue afterwards. So that's a good place to go for research. Just search, iPhone X camera issue in some apps, something like that, simple. Some phones have diagnostic menus. You can press a special key combination to get into those. I just listed the one for Samsung, which is *#0 *#. If any of you have a Samsung phone, I invite you to dial that number and see where it takes you. It's a fun little test menu where you can, make your screen change into different colors and test your speaker and your microphone and your camera, stuff like that. It makes it really handy and really easy to pinpoint the issue. So once you figure out the issue, you're going to want to find some parts, and can be a little overwhelming, a little daunting. There's so many options, so many websites, so many places to go, maybe fewer places to go in person because of COVID, but we still want to, support local and shop local where we can. So I've listed a few sources here. The first one on the list is actually local to Scarborough, LCD Swap, or Cell Phone City as they're known. There's also Mobile Centrics, Unlocker, also Pacific Mall. Is a fantastic place if you're willing to kind of step out of your comfort zone and maybe navigate what it's like to be in kind of a very strange environment where there's just so much to choose from, and all these foreign kind of phone cases and parts and all sorts of stuff. You do want to be a little bit careful because you can encounter some knockoff parts. But it's not like you're going to get just completely ripped off. You're just going to maybe have something that's not a genuine part. So it's not like it's not going to work. It's just not going to be exactly the original part. And I'll go into that in a bit detail later on. If you do want to buy online, if you do want to save a little bit of money or just support iFixit, and iFixit does sell parts, and they do ship to Canada. There's also Chinese suppliers, which in all honesty, this is where I purchased the screen for this phone from AliExpress or eBay. If you just punch in your phone and the part, you'll probably get exactly what you're looking for. It will take a long time to get here, and it'll kind of take the slow boat from China, as they say, and might not be the most environmentally friendly option. But if you're looking for something that's very hard to find, or if some of those other companies that I listed before might not be able to serve individual customers. So I've only had experience ordering like 5 parts, you know, like $100 worth of parts. So just something to keep in mind, that sometimes it's hard to buy just one thing. You kind of have to be more of a business to do business with some of these people. But yeah, eBay is always an option. Kijiji, you might even be able to walk over to, you know, just some cell phone shop that does repairs and, you know, ask them, hey, I kind of want to learn how to do this myself and save a little bit of money. Would you be willing to sell me just the screen for this iPhone? And chances are that you'll be willing to. They have it in stock because they repair it all the time. So you might be able to save some money and kind of ask some questions, learn a bit from them, you know, anything to watch out for. And yeah, get a part instead of buying it from China. So as I mentioned before, Pacific Mall has a large percentage of aftermarket parts. I won't say fake, but there's 3 types of parts basically that you're going to encounter. So there's aftermarket, which is, well, we'll start from the originals. So OEM parts that stands for original equipment manufacturer, and that's the exact fit and function. It's as if you went into the back of the Apple store and took a part off their shelves. So it's the exact one that rolls off of the assembly line and gets put onto the iPhone. It is hard to find and it is expensive because Apple and Samsung and all these companies go through great lengths to protect the source of their parts so that they're the only ones that have them. The only way that they kind of make it into the world is through alternative kind of channels where maybe overstock or shipping delays, or maybe a pallet gets damaged in shipment and so they get sold at auction. So it can be hard to find, can be expensive, but these are the highest quality parts. So if you do find someone that is selling them, preferably someone who's a bit more reputable, make sure to ask if this is an original part, and if that's important to you to have that original part, then go ahead and purchase that. The second is
a question, Rob, sorry. Can some mechanical parts be 3D printed?
In the case of plastic cases, yes. So mostly like plastic parts, kind of like housings, maybe even like a case like this one could be 3D printed, but anything electronic or electrical would tend not to be. So I've had no experience in 3D printing replacement parts. I do use a lot of super glue, so that is one option. If you don't want to buy the part, sometimes you can just kind of smudge it back together. But yeah, that is an option, maybe for some, what do you call it, screws or screw holes rather, that tend to kind of strip out or wear out, and that can work. But yeah, that's a good question. It's going to be probably used more in the future. As of right now, I definitely haven't had that much experience with it. Yeah, refurbished parts are the next category. So this is when you take an original part and kind of repair only what's wrong with it. So in the case of cracked screens, what'll happen a lot of the time is, I didn't mention this before, but you can sometimes replace only the glass on the screen, which is extremely hard to do. It's kind of like having 2 potato chips that are glued together and, you know, cutting only the top potato chip off without breaking the bottom one. So it's a very difficult thing to do. It is possible, even if you look on YouTube and you want to save a lot of money, you can get the glass for only like $10 or $20. And if you replace only the glass, you still have your original screen and just have only replaced the glass. The downside is it's very hard to do. Usually you need some special equipment to heat up the phone and cut through it. So what happens is companies will take that part and they will refurbish it and repair it and make it look almost brand new. And that'll save a lot of money on the part. And it's very close to the original quality, but it's not 100%. It'll still work perfectly fine, but it's not the original. It's say 80%, 90% the same. The last one is aftermarket, and this is literally where you know, an entire factory is created or an assembly line is made for like manufacturing parts from scratch, kind of like imitation or copying, especially for iPhones. Batteries and screens are #1 and #2 most kind of copied and cloned in the aftermarket. So they may have some slight quirks since it's not engineered or created by Apple. It might pop up a little message, you know, you're using a non-genuine part. Some Samsung phones also do this now. So it's not going to have the exact same fit. It might not have the exact same function, but it'll work well enough for most purposes, 75, 80%. And it does save a lot of money. And it is just something to be aware of, that a lot of parts do tend to come from the aftermarket now that companies are becoming more and more protective of their property. An easy way to tell is if the logo is missing, like if there's an Apple logo on your battery originally and the part that you have has no Apple logo, that's a pretty easy way to tell that it's not an authorized seller. Another way to tell is if that message comes up, or if it just doesn't feel right. A lot of times you kind of have to go by feel and reputation. So that's just something to be aware of, especially in Pacific Mall. Just kind of ask the seller, is this an aftermarket? Is it refurbished? Does it have a warranty? That might help protect you from bad parts. So I've kind of talked about some caveats, and newer phones don't really want you to fix them. A lot of Apple screens and batteries come up with warning messages if you don't buy the original part. Another thing to note is that water resistance. A lot of newer phones come with water resistance, and that comes in the form of a rubber seal that keeps water out. And what happens is that when you open the phone up, that seal gets broken, and unless you replace it, then your phone is no longer water resistant when you put it back together. So you can get these seals in some cases, maybe $5, $10. Just another item to be aware of that you'll need to purchase when you're buying your part. And the last caveat is probably the most important. You're going to want to back up your data, back it up again, and back it up 1/3 time to make sure that everything is safe in case of a catastrophe, if you do still have access to your phone, of course. The last thing is, when you take a phone apart, it's very important to be careful with the battery, to not poke a hole in it, because lithium batteries in phones can and do catch on fire. A while back, the Samsung Galaxy Note phones actually caught on fire spontaneously because of a battery issue, but especially if you poke a tiny little hole and air gets in there, it can cause a fire. So discharge it to where it's under 25% to lower the risk, and be careful. Try not to use sharp objects in and around the battery. So things you'll need. Sometimes when you order parts or buy a part, you'll actually get a little kit, kind of like this. If you want to gallery view that, all you need is really a couple of screwdrivers, a couple of these little pry bars, kind of plastic opening tools, as well as a suction cup to open up the screen. So you can buy a quality screwdriver set if you're planning on repairing maybe yours, a friend's, and your family members' phones. But little things like this are more than enough. Little screwdriver set like this. So you've got your flathead, your Phillips, and Apple likes to put little pentalobe screws. So this is one of those. You're gonna need some prying and opening tools. So this is what these are, these blue plastic pieces, just to get into the little nooks and crannies and disconnect connectors. Guitar picks are also great. You'll see this is kind of shaped like a guitar pick. It's a little thicker, so I like to use actual guitar picks sometimes. And also playing cards. I've got one right here. It works really well to get under screens and break the little rubber seals that I was talking about. Something thin and flexible, just so you can kind of get in there. If you have fingernails, those also work great too. Last is this kind of little suction cup, especially on iPhones. They open from the front to back. So on iPhones, what happens is you undo a couple screws and you pull up on the screen itself. So you'll need a little suction cup like this in order to be able to actually do the pulling on the screen. On the topic of putting it back together, you'll need some double-sided sticky tape, as well as those rubber seals that I mentioned, if your phone is waterproof. These are usually supplied with screens. I didn't actually check, but I have a roll of double-sided sticky tape if there's not one already in there. So just check to make sure. And obviously you have a clean and organized work area. Like I mentioned before, maybe have a little template. This one's for an iPhone, so you can go step by step and put your screws in each spot, and then you'll know exactly where each one goes. And last but definitely not least is a lot of time and patience. If you start to get frustrated, if you're a little jittery, then just take a couple breaths and take your time, because it's very easy to make what seems like a bad thing worse just by kind of reacting negatively and getting frustrated. So it is a very delicate art. There's a lot of little components here. So if you kind of try and force something that shouldn't be forced, bad things can happen. So be gentle, take your time. If something feels like it's stuck, if it feels like it's about to break, triple check to make sure you've taken out all the screws, double check the information that you have on your steps to make sure you didn't miss anything. And yeah, just try and be mindful of the process of a repair. If you're really stuck, then maybe just take a little break, go for a walk. It's not the end of the world if you can't get it done in 2 hours. Maybe 3 or 4 is what it takes. It always takes me longer when I've had a tough day. So I'm not the only one, I'm sure.
Rob, question there is, would you recommend heating up a phone to open it?
Heating up certain phones is required. Heating up, any and every phone is usually not necessary. So like this Samsung, you don't really need to heat it up unless you're taking apart the screen. And only then, you only need to heat up the phone in order to take the screen off. On iPhones, on the other hand, like iPhone 5 onwards, so 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, and onwards, they open from front to back. So you do need to heat up the screen in order to take that off. And from that step on, you don't really need to use any heat unless you're, doing something like the back glass or something like that. But the steps, if you do find them on iFixit, will specify. But I'll say the rule of thumb is you really only need to heat up the screen, and on most Android phones, that's the last step. So in order to take out the battery or a speaker or something like that, it would actually be preferable that the phone be room temperature or even maybe a little cooler. This is a demo of not an iPhone 4, but a little off-brand, I think it's Chinese made. It's called Inos. I don't know if you can see on there. It's called Inos. I think it's like an i6, i5, but we'll pull up the screen here and you'll see that no matter how many times I press on a number, it's not typing anything. So the touch screen is not working because it's probably going to be even harder to see, but there's a little crack in the corner there. And it's actually going right down the side of the screen here, which has, maybe if I can get the light on that just right. But the point is, it's cracked, so we need to replace the screen. And my earphones just let me know they're on low battery, so I'm going to switch over to my laptop audio to see. Let's see here.
All right, can you still hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. So yeah, we need a new screen on this. So first we'll do a little miniature unboxing of the replacement part, make sure it looks similar or the same to what we need. Some bubble wrap, we can play around with that and pop it later. So looks like this came very well packaged, so it should not be damaged. Up on some of the styrofoam here. There we go. So we put that side by side. And I don't know if you can see, but the screen on the left has rounded corners. So now you can see in a live demo how I've just gotten a part that might not work, because this one here has square corners. So even though they look very similar, I'm actually pretty sure this is not going to work, because if I put that over, you can see that the replacement is square and this one is round. So that's unfortunate. We can take it apart and still dive into the phone. Maybe we can test the screen out and get some feedback that way. But it seems like I have been duped. Buyer beware indeed, because I bought this screen as a replacement for an iOS i7, i6, or it was, and waited a month for it to get here, only to find it is the wrong one. Well, that's embarrassing, but let's dive right into it anyway. So most phones, you just pop off the back cover. You can get a fingernail under here and just kind of go around the edges. Battery out. Some phones these days do not have a removable battery, so just make sure to look up how to remove your battery. You might need to pop off, unscrew a couple of connectors or clips. But when manufacturers say that a battery is not removable, it just means that it's a little harder to remove. So this one came out pretty easy. If you went on to something like an iPhone, it just means that once you take the screen or the cover off, there's a couple of screws that are securing it on. So take out any SIM cards or memory cards that might be inside the phone. So this one pops up and out like that. Set that off to the side. And in this case, there's no memory card, and we're just going to go around identifying any screws to take out. I can already see there's one in this corner, one in this corner, two here, third one there, up along the sides here. So on most phones that are not iPhones, it's pretty obvious how to get into them if you don't have any instructions. And it consists of just taking out all the screws. So we'll start with this one in the top left. And what I like to do is put screws in the same general location. So if I pretend this is my phone, I'll kind of draw a square on a table, and then I will take a screw out. A set of tweezers comes in handy as well if you don't have. And I'll just kind of put that. So this represents the top left corner of the phone. And I'll just continue doing that around each side. Until all of them are out. And I mentioned before how these cheap little plastic tools are all you need, but they can be a little painful to use just because they're so small. So I'm going to upgrade to a real screwdriver. This one's going to be a bit more comfortable to use. So we'll start by taking out the silver screws. I don't know if you can tell, but they are silver. Oh, and also get a magnetic screwdriver if you do choose to invest in one. It'll make your life 10 times easier when doing a repair. Screws just magically pop right out. can see, or maybe all the silver screws, which I've noticed along the sides here. We've taken them out and put them onto the same location on this grid so that I know where they go back. So now there's 3 black screws. I'll point them out. One right here, one right here, and one right here. So we'll take those out next. Put them in the middle. Okay, so now if I look closely at this, there are no more screws that should stand in the way of us taking off this back cover. So sometimes you can get in under the edge with your fingernail and kind of pop off. There's usually little clips that hold it on. And on the other side, like that. And also helps to use one of these little plastic pry tools. And maybe we'll start around this top corner. I'll try and kind of do it on the screen so you can get an idea. I'll actually start off with my finger because it is the thinnest out of everything. Maybe I have a guitar pick or a credit card. Let's see here. I can feel it gently coming apart. And where did I put? I also have, you want to keep away from sharp X-Acto knives, but I have this one's kind of dull, so I'll kind of use it along the edges to help get the process started. What else could I use? These ones tend to work as well. There we go. So I don't know if you can see, but that worked perfectly to get in just between this silver border and the black that's there. So you're going to hear the clips undoing. So now that this is unclipped, it's a little free. So we're just going to continue along the bottom and the side. And it sounds painful, but they're just little plastic clips. They'll come apart and they'll be put back together just fine. And now if I give it a jiggle, I'm double checking right here just to make sure there's no extra screws. So what I think is left is there's a little sticker here, which I might need to pull up on gently. Because I was feeling it kind of giving me a little bit of resistance. So the sticker needs to come off a little bit more. There we go. So now undo that clip and we're in. So there we go. This is the phone itself. And I can point out a few components here. This is literally just a little plastic frame. Sometimes it has like antennas and maybe a speaker built into it. This one does have a speaker on it. So if you, maybe your phone got a little bit wet and your speaker, when you put it on loudspeaker or play some music, it sounds kind of like warbly, or maybe it doesn't work at all. So you would replace just this part down here is the speaker. You can usually just pop those up and put a new one in, and away you go. Other than that, there's not much reason to replace these unless like you dropped it and it cracked and broke, or if you dropped it and your cell reception is bad, then maybe one of the antennas here got messed up, because you can see the little gold contact plates on here. These hook on and have little metal wires which act as antennas. So those are responsible for your Wi-Fi and your cell reception. So those touch onto the main board, onto these little springy little clips here. And yeah, get you cell reception. So like I was saying, this is the wrong screen, but maybe what we can do is hook it up just to see whether it works. I wonder how that'll play out. So theoretically, I mean, let me take a look here. On the bottom. So, I mean, if you were to replace this screen, then you would start by disconnecting all these connectors. Some of them are little flip tab connectors. So what I'm going to do here, there's a little plastic black tab, and that flips up. So I'll do it again. Put that down. This little black plastic connector. We flip it up, and that'll expose this cable, which is kind of like a little ribbon. And you just gently pull it out. So now it's loose. Maybe it wasn't so gentle. I was kind of paying attention to two things at once, but we'll get another opportunity here with this black one, a brown one, I should say. So we flip the tab up. There we go. So you can see that's been flipped. And now we can pull that out. And now it's out. So what that tab does is it kind of locks it in place, puts some pressure on it. So we need to unlock it basically. So if I were to guess here, I'm assuming those are connectors for the screen. Not quite sure. Never seen this phone before. We got another little connector up here. So same deal. We're going to flip up on that. And then we're going to gently poke it out. This looks like it might be for the camera or the touch screen. And we also want to take a look at any screws. And I do see one right here, which is going to need to be removed for this board to come out. So that's right there. We can see a screw holds in this board. So we're going to undo that one. Set that off to the side. And what else do we have that's replaceable here? So in this case, it really depends on the phone what's replaceable. So you can see on this phone, the headphone jack is actually soldered onto the board. So there's no connector. It's just a part of the board. So if you were, like you had headphones plugged in and you dropped your phone and like something got jammed up or smashed and the headphone jack no longer works, on some phones you can replace just the jack. And that would look something like, let's see, do I have a I don't have a headphone jack to show you, but I do have a USB connector. So this is from a Samsung phone. So for example, if your headphone jack were on a small little board like this, then these are much cheaper to replace. This costs maybe like $15. And this has a microphone on it. There's that little gold thing right here. Show. So this is a microphone. Focus. Focus. So that's a microphone right there. This is a USB port for charging. And these are some antenna connectors. So this little cheap board sits at the bottom of your phone. So that's why the microphone is there. So you hold it like this and you talk into the bottom. Same thing with the headphone jack. Sometimes there's a little board at the top of the phone where there'll be a headphone jack on it. So it's easy to replace those. But in the case of something like this, this is not so easy to replace. So this will be, like I said, it depends on your model of phone. Sometimes you can get away with replacing just the part. Sometimes you're going to have to, get this entire board you know, either sent in somewhere or just repaired with micro soldering. It is possible to do, but you know, you need specialized tools like a soldering iron and everything. So yeah, do your research. It might be beginner friendly, might not be. So at this point, since we took out that screw, we can actually just, this board is already like basically falling out already. So we can just gently lift it up in case there's something still plugged in, which I notice now there is. So you can see on the bottom right-hand corner of the board, there's this wire that runs down all the way to the bottom. So this thin little white wire is plugged in to the underside of this board. So what we're going to have to do is just flip it over gently and see there's a connector right there. And right there is a connector. So we're going to have to just pop that off. So that's been popped off. And I can show you the spot where it plugged into. So that was right there that we just needed to pop off a little connector for the antenna. And at this point, we're pretty much set in the case of we had the screen to be replaced. I mean, this is pretty much the screen and the frame. So depending on where you go to buy your parts, sometimes they'll give you the screen and the frame as like a complete unit, and sometimes they'll give you just the screen. So in this case, if we were to use this actual screen, you'll notice that it doesn't have a frame on it, so we can't just replace it as it is. So in this case, Leah, you asked, would you have to heat up the phone? And in this case, you would. So I have a hot air gun, which you can get at Home Depot, Canadian Tire, anywhere, for like 20 bucks. You can also use a hair dryer. Do not put your phone in the oven. That is a bad idea. But you want to apply heat just to the outside of where it's held on, because you can see that sort of, imagine this is your existing screen. There's not that many places to put adhesive or glue. So sometimes they'll put it on the back, but most of the time they'll just put it around the edges. And so there'll be glue along the sides here, all along the edges, more like tape, kind of a double-sided adhesive, excuse me. And you need to heat it up because it's very strong. You know, you don't want your phone to just kind of fall apart, because literally all that's keeping this screen on is a little piece of tape. So it's pretty strong tape, but the nice thing about it is it gets very how do you say, soft and, well, less sticky when you apply heat. So since this screen is broken and the phone is unusable anyway, I might as well kind of demonstrate how to take off and reuse this frame. You want to remove as much as possible from it before you do this. It's okay to leave some stuff, like there's a little vibration motor on the bottom there, and just this little cable. So there's also an earpiece speaker up there, and we can remove that. So I'm just gonna plug in my heat gun. And I don't know, let me know if this is like overwhelming.
No, it's good.
I'll put myself on mute. Is that okay? Okay. So yeah, we just want to apply some heat, maybe like 3 to 6 inches away, just along the top and the bottom. Basically, you want it to be hot enough that it's still something you can touch, but where it's pretty kind of uncomfortable. So you don't want to burn yourself. You don't want to stay on one area too long, but you just want to heat it up evenly and gently to the point where it's nice and hot. And I'm going to concentrate on this top part right here because I'm going to take out that speaker. And so this is where the X-Acto knife comes in handy. We lift up gently on that. And out it comes. So this is, if you can't hear anybody, this is the part that you need to replace, just a little speaker on the top there. And there's basically a little tape on the front that holds this on. That's why we wanted to heat it up so that we could get that out. And this will make our life a lot easier because there's a little cutout for the speaker here, which it can be easy to damage when you're going around with your prying tool or playing card. So you can tend to damage that if you don't take it out. This bottom stuff I wouldn't worry about because there's nothing that's really going to affect the removal process down here. So it cools off quick, so try and work not quickly, but try and recognize when the phone is cool enough so that you can heat it back up, because you need it to be pretty hot most of the time that you're working with it. So I'm going to grab my playing card. This is my favorite tool for doing screens. You can try with an X-Acto knife, you can try with the plastic tools, but they're a little thick. So what I like to do is I take a playing card right into literally just the very top, right in between the plastic, and you can see I've gotten under the screen now. So you can see my card is actually poking in behind the selfie camera, but it's not, it's in between the frame and the screen. So I've gotten in, basically. I've gotten exactly where I want to be. I'm just going to work that gently. So you can see this is where the crack in the screen is. I'm working gently around that and breaking out that adhesive and going down the side here. And I can hear it. I don't know if you can. I'm trying to give you a little audio effect there, but now our card is very nicely inside. And this is exactly where you want to be. Not forcing anything. I'll go around the other side now. Okay, so at this point, I think I have enough of it free that I should be able to just kind of lift up on it from the top. So this is another thing to keep in mind before you do any lifting, is there's a small cable right here, which is going to need to come off because this is attached to the screen. So we lift up on that, and that's going to basically feed through onto the other side. So you can see when I pull down on the screen, that this kind of wants to come through. So we feed that through gently. And sometimes it needs to be folded in on itself. Let's see. There we go. So that little cable has now gone through to the other side. And we can see our playing card, and we can do kind of a little open it up and heat the bottom. And now the bottom just needs a little bit of extra persuasion. Oh, And maybe make sure you have ventilation in your room, because now that I'm using that heat gun, it just raised the temperature of my little room here like 20 degrees. I'm sweating. So we got that off. There we go. Oh, this one's just completely coming apart. Beautiful. Okay. So this is basically completely off. There's just this little cable holding it on. So this is where it's worth investigating before you take something apart. But it looks like we have to take off this this label so that this cable can then come down. Or maybe it's this one. Well, anyway, we'll have to take off this. So we get under here. There we go. So this cable on the right is the one we're interested in. So we're gonna, oh, this sounds so satisfying. Just peeling this off. And it comes out the back. So there we go. We've got our old screen here. And here is the new screen, which you can see is definitely not the exact same. So this one has a different kind of connector. You can see the color is kind of different. You can see that this one has 2 little gold tabs and this one only has 1. Yeah, so I just got the wrong part. I'm like 99% sure the listing was for an i7 screen, which I asked for and ordered. But yeah, at this point, this is where you would basically reapply adhesive and just put your new screen, you know, onto this frame. Use some tape on the top and the bottom. I can kind of show you what the tape looks like because it's on this old screen. So it's just this kind of thin black double-sided sticky tape. There's a little bit on here. If I peel that off, I don't know if you can see it. But it's just this kind of like really thin black sticky tape, which holds on the screen to the phone. A little bit on the top there. Yeah.
So is the place that you bought it from, Rob, was that a reliable place to begin with?
Well, it was just AliExpress, which is some good, some bad. I've had good luck because, well, I don't know, it's just luck. I've had good luck buying almost everything really, like iPhone parts, Samsung parts. The listings are usually, you know, I go with stuff that has reviews. So this one had pretty good reviews, but I think with stuff like this, with phones that are like, this is just some random Chinese kind of cheap phone. Like Inos is not a very well-known company. There's probably not a lot of parts for these phones. So it's a learning experience, but yeah, we can always try again. And I'm gonna need to because, you know, this screens usually are not functional after you remove them. You can see that we did a little bit of damage. This is kind of coming apart at the side when we take this out. If I were a little more careful, then maybe it would have been possible to kind of preserve this, but it is kind of, yeah, not ideal, especially, yeah, coming apart like that. So this is where I said, you know, it's kind of like having 2 potato chips that are glued together. And even just taking out the 2 potato chip assembly from a frame is pretty difficult. So that's when it can be beneficial to buy one that already has the frame attached. So I'm not sure where to go from here. I guess we could try and put it back together, but I'm probably just going to leave it like this until I get the right part. So I guess we can mention a few more things. Is on this main board here, you've got a few cameras. So there's a selfie camera on here, which we can just pop out the same way. We lift up the tab and out it comes.
Question there, Rob. Can you keep a phone open like this for how many hours or days? Because you said, the last order you had took a month for it to arrive. So
yeah, theoretically forever. The battery, if it's not fully discharged, will last the same. It'll kind of do the same thing as it would if you just left your phone powered off. It'll just slowly discharge. So, I mean, don't do it for like 3 years, because then you'll probably need a new battery. But as long as the biggest risk here is not something like going wrong with the parts. Obviously, if you like put them on your desk and like your cat jumps on the desk and just parts go flying everywhere, then that's a problem. But the biggest risk here is like forgetting where things go, because when you get into something, you kind of, okay, I know what this is, I know where this goes. You kind of get into a groove. You have good memory, and then if you take something apart and you come back to it, a month later, then you should really hope to know what you did to get there, because you're going to need to put it all back together. So the biggest risk is actually just forgetting what you were doing.
I think the last workshop somebody mentioned that they could kind of do a video recording of them taking it apart so that they can actually look at it afterwards.
Yes.
And the last time you did have an iFixit I guess guide that told you the step-by-step.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, we can launch into a Q&A. I'll be happy to answer or attempt to answer any questions. I see there's 20 new messages. That's a lot.
Oh no, we've been going through that. So I'm going to just stop the recording, pause the